So delighted. So delighted. Yeah, I'm so delighted.
That's right, my friends. There is no jumping up and down, jumping on people's shoulders, and acting like you did the greatest thing in the history of the world by scoring a touchdown in the NFL or scoring a goal in World Cup soccer. There's simply this confident, humble man named Alex Honnold saying,
So delighted.
yes, this is the greatest documentary I've ever witnessed. And this is by far the greatest mind-body achievement by a human being that I have ever witnessed. What Alex Honnold did on El Capitan on June 3rd, 2017, it is miraculous. There's a bunch of words, a bunch of adjectives for it. Delightful would certainly be one of them, but also enervating, palm sweating, captivating, intriguing, engrossing, call it whatever you will, but it is amazing. But another truly great thing about this documentary by Elizabeth Chai, Vassar Helly, and Jimmy Chin, I'm going to call them Elizabeth and Jimmy going forward. The amazing thing about this is it's not just one conquest, it is two conquests. The second conquest is El Capitan, the virtuoso masterpiece summiting of granite wall El Capitan by Alexander the Great. And the first one achieved in this film is the one that is universal to all of us. We either conquer it or we get defeated by it. It is relationships. You either come to a good place in your relationship and figure out who you are, who the hell you are. Are you a warrior?
It's about being a warrior.
Or are you happy and cozy?
The thing is, anybody can be happy and cozy.
Etc. And do you get comfortable with that? And do you put that in its proper perspective and proper place so that you can go on and be the warrior? So there are two conquests. I'm going to talk about those two conquests in this, and I'm going to talk about the glorious cinematography and directing and editing and documentary work that Elizabeth and Jimmy did on this historic film. So let's jump in and take a look.
All the gin joints and
You're busy living.
I watched sea beams.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
It is hard to know, my friends, where to begin when you are confronted with a cinematic masterpiece, something so thoughtful, so rigorous, so compelling, so professional, describing human conflict and human accomplishment. It's astounding, and you really don't know where to begin. So I'm going to begin with the makers of this, the producers of this, to tip my hat to their work that they did on this, Elizabeth and Jimmy and the people around them, Shannon Dill, Evan Hayes, and Mikey Schaefer, Marco Beltrami on the music, Bob Eisenhart on the editing. So I'm not going to be naming a lot of those people during this. I'm just going to talk about Elizabeth and Jimmy, but those other people know that my hat is off to you as well. I will talk more about the music later as far as Marco goes. But then after I talk about the making of this, the extraordinary, exquisite making of Free Solo, I'm going to talk about the two conquests that I mentioned in the opening of this analysis review of the Free Solo documentary. And those two conquests are the conquest of personality, of identity, of getting one's identity or getting one's identity back. And in this case, it is Alex partially losing himself because of, frankly, a somewhat dysfunctional new relationship with Sonny. And there are things to work out. And he does, miraculously. I mean, it seems almost. But she is getting in his way. She doesn't mean to. And I'm going to get into that. She seems like a very nice person. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about that conquest first. And then I'm going to get into the major subject of this film, and that is the enormous, the magnificent El Cap and Alex's climb. Ballet in thin air climb. 236 minutes. of El Capitan in Yellowstone National Park, Yosemite, and it is just extraordinary. So let's start out with, I've got about 13 or 14 really quick things I want to say about this. There's so many great things about this movie. I had a difficult time figuring out which ones I felt were the greatest aspects of filmmaking, and I really just hardly can say, but I'm just going to point out the cinematography and photography. It's a standout. The intimate conversations between Sonny and Alex in
We work on that.
I don't know how Jimmy and Elizabeth got these. I mean, cameras set up in the van, I suppose, without anybody there. A couple of people, camera people in the van occasionally, and outside the van, in the Las Vegas home, etc. But the conversations themselves are so intimate, and the guard is down, so they're not acting like there's any cameras about. That's good filmmaking, folks. And then the other two things that really stood out to me were the sort of extemporaneous comment narrations of the camera people around Alex as he's making his climb in that 14-minute segment at the end of the film, near the end of the film. The things that the guys say, wow. I mean, it puts the whole thing in perspective. I love that.
It is so slippery right there. This is where he bailed.
It just gave me chills so many times. And I think the last thing that really, the fourth thing that really stood out to me was the music. I mean, Marco Beltrami, I'll talk about it more later, but his use of piano, violins, and horns in this are simply extraordinary. And I will say what he does in getting out of the way is what I always talk about in my movie reactions. He does it best. And the fact that he can mimic our emotions in his music with the piano, violins, and horns is perfection in this movie. I'll talk about that at the 1 hour and 30-minute mark, maybe, and a couple other marks here in a little bit to give him his proper due. Anyway, the cinematography, photography on this, if you've watched it, it's stunning. And when I show some clips here in a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about what they did, and maybe a little bit about how they did it. But Jimmy Chin was, I think, he was in charge of the crew, and I'll talk a little bit about the morality issues they had with this as well. But the intimate conversations I've already mentioned, I'll go into those more when I talk about the relationship between Sonny and Alex. And also another thing about this was the interviews of everybody on this. Almost all the camera guys, the ones that really stand out to me are Mikey.
I'm worried that tomorrow's gonna be it. Like Alex's existence will be over. I was like, oh, I have to be prepared for that outcome, and I have to realize that is a real possibility.
The interviews with Tommy, the fellow climber that was a hero of Alex's.
I've spent 20 years of my life climbing El Cap, but I never do it without a rope. There's no margin for error. Imagine an Olympic gold medal level athletic achievement that if you don't get that gold medal, you're gonna die.
Love Tommy in this. I love everybody in this, except for Sonny. I'll get to that in a little bit. She's a very nice person. I'll get to that in a little bit. Just some problems there. Anyway, but I loved everybody in this. And the thing that came out in the interviews and just listening to them talk is how much everybody loves Alex and how much they care about him. They want to do anything they can to keep Alex safe.
All right. No mistakes tomorrow.
Elizabeth and Jimmy bring this home to us. The interviews on this and listening to them talk make us care so much about Alex, besides the fact that we care about him just watching him being interviewed.
I guess I was quite a shy child. A bit of a dark soul, I think. Maybe melancholic is the word.
Makes us care so much about him that 14-minute segment with him climbing is white-knuckled for us. Palmy sweats, heart racing, shoulders up, nervous, anxious as hell. Yeah, it's us that way. It's not Alex. Alex is as cool as a cucumber up there doing his ballet on the granite. I mean, my God, amazing. It's us, but it's their interviews and many other things that Elizabeth and Jimmy do that make this such extraordinary, captivating filmmaking. And then another thing was the short little bit on the amygdala. That whole bit I thought was really fascinating that they actually included that in this. You know, they did 700 hours of video on this, and we get 96 minutes of actual actual documentary with a 3-minute credit at the end, 4-minute credit at the end. But we get 96 minutes. They had to whittle it down to 96 minutes. I'm glad everything that's in this, obviously, they decided to include. I like the amygdala aspect because it really showed that Alex operates on a different tension risk level than the rest of us. But he explains that also by essentially you end up making the amygdala. There is no fear response because you've worked through the fear. And of course, the amygdala only lights up when there is a startled or fear response. Well, if you've done something over and over and you work it out, then the amygdala isn't going to fire, right? Well, that's what it's, and I think Alex is right on that. And I think the amygdala fired on him on that first attempt up where he stopped on free blast. I'll get into that here in a little bit, the reasons for that. And it wasn't the filmmaking that Alex said. It had nothing to do with the filmmaking, which he proved later on his second attempt. He was perfectly fine. So there was something else going on. I'll get to that in a little bit. But anyway, the amygdala was a nice little short segment on this. And then I want to talk about the graphics. Terrific graphics on this over and over by Elizabeth and Jimmy, showing the route, showing the elevations, and then showing the pitches, which I'll talk about here in a second. Wonderful graphics on this. And I loved the little short bit on Alex's diary recitation where he's talking about the moves.
Pitch 1 is stay left towards the top. Splitter feels more secure. Pitch 2, trust right foot, rock on, trust the feet, right hand to the last undercling. 8, easy romp, go fast. 9, stay outside of the...
And I think the moves were on problem, I believe. Yes. And as he was talking, each move, the fingers, the not hesitating, the feet, the toes, and then them cutting back between the diary, between Alex talking, and the actual movements out on the rock was just genius. Genius film work, genius editing, and genius directing on that. And I loved Alex saying, underline, double underline, I think it was on that.
Trust feet, trust, underline, double exclamation point, period. Autopilot, period.
Terrific way to end that, and his confidence that came through. Wonderful, wonderful film work. And then the 6 pitches, we get a very good idea of what El Cap is. It's 3,000 feet, 2,900 feet, 3,200 feet. I'm not sure what's right on this. I never could figure it out. The 3,200 feet seem to include the actual down climb. I don't know. Let's just say 3,000 feet. But anyway, we got a sense of what this 3,000 feet is. It's dozens of pitches, but the main thing is that there are 6 primary pitches, and I almost have them memorized. It's the first short climb up. It's the free blast slab. And then it's the hollow flake.
And then the thing about Freerider is that From the base of the hollow flake, it's one crack system all the way to the top, which is like, what, 2,000 feet?
And of course, then the monster off width, and enduro corner.
I mean, to have the slabs and the boulder problem behind him is monumental.
And the boulder problems. So we have those in our heads. I'd almost memorize them, but the reason I've got them almost memorized is because they made this so clear in the movie. There are 6 dangerous points in this, but let me just add that frankly, I think there was a 7th. In fact, the 7th to me was more frightening to watch. At 2,500 feet, the traverse, and then we get those wonderful comments, that narration comments from the guys below. It's Mikey and Mark.
Yeah, that's kind of exposed right there.
Oh my god, it's so exposed.
Down below, I was terrified watching him come around that corner. And I'll get to that here in a little bit when I talk about that last 14 minutes. But the 6 pitches, they got that across to us. Terrific ways of getting this all done without over-explaining. Brilliant by Elizabeth and Jimmy. And then giving us some background on the danger of free soloing, the deaths of the other climbers.
I think everybody who has made free soloing a big part of their life is dead now.
Comments, they're all dead now, and other things. And then we get the pictures of these people. Brings it home to us, makes it personal, brilliantly done. Nice little short segment. Tons of little short segments in this to give us perspective. Well done. Well done. And then that whole short little segment on Yuli Steck and his death and leaving a wife behind. I'm going to get into that more when I talk about how that was handled by Sonny and Alex and caused a rift. Talk about enervating cinema, watching that inside the van. Okay, I'll get to that in a little bit, but that segment was very well done, the way that was put in. So yet another one. Then I love the pieces on Jimmy and his crew and the worries they had and talking about it and what do they do if Alex does fall to his death.
Okay, everybody knows what to do if something goes wrong. Josh, just to confirm, who should Mikey call?
The easiest thing would just be 911, and that wheel will get kicked into gear and tell them what you know.
The climber.
Yeah.
That whole scene right there by the van and all the camera people around and the look on Mikey's face. It's poignant. It's a really poignant scene. Again, bringing death. Death presides over this documentary. Is he going to conquer death? And let me just say that I can't imagine watching Free Solo not knowing how it ends. There were people, I've heard that there were people, hundreds, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of people who've seen this movie who did not know how it ends on the summit. Can you imagine? I cannot imagine watching this movie, this documentary, watching him come around the traverse with 2,500 feet of air below him, as I think it's Mark points out in the documentary, or the free blast slab, or the boulder problem, or even enduro. I just can't imagine watching all of that, not knowing that knowing that at any minute he falls to his death. But even watching it, I'm getting sweaty palms here. I just mentioned those pitches. I've got sweaty palms thinking about it. That's crazy. That's crazy. Wow. So Jimmy and his crew, fantastic. And then I loved all the Alex preparations in this. I mean, what's that thing called where he has to, I should know that by now, where he does his pull-ups and everything else with his fingers. I've tried that, by the way, myself. I can last for about 5 seconds. Alex seems to do it for minutes on end. But anyway, all of his preparations, the vegetarian diet, love those sequences. And Alex getting a big grin on his face when he's bragging about his concoction early in the movie.
Freaking good. I've outdone myself. Spicy chili really adds something.
It's extraordinary stuff. It's good stuff. It makes it very, very personal and makes us understand what this extraordinary man had to do, does do, to prepare for his conquest. Okay, so that's 14 things that I found highly compelling about this movie. Again, hats off to Elizabeth and Jimmy for such an exquisitely thoughtful surround sound feel of what I consider to be the greatest mind-body accomplishment in all of human history. So thank you to Elizabeth and Jimmy. And I also want to thank them for doing something that I would not have done had I done this documentary. And that is, I would have left out virtually all of the conversations and intimacies and everything, almost everything concerning Alex and Sonny. I would have focused on almost exclusively on the climb and the camera making around the climb. And after I watched this the first time, I've watched this 3 times. After I watched it the first time, I was mad. I'm no longer mad, but I was mad that there was so much between Alex and Sonny in this. I felt like it was a waste of time. And I still felt that way a little bit after watching it a second time. And I was going to do this analysis after watching it a second time, but something was niggling at me. The thing that was niggling at me is that you have to have that in there about Sonny and Alex. Because not only does it make this whole portraiture more intimate and gives us more of an insight into Alex, but it turns out that Alex has to, as I've said before, has to conquer himself. He has to learn how to handle an intimate relationship while plotting the most dangerous thing that any human being has ever tried and survived. So my hat's off to Elizabeth and Jimmy for making the decision to put so much of Sonny and Alex into this. So that said, there's your segue. Let's move in to the second portion of this analysis. Okay, so I got a sense of foreboding on this documentary the moment that Sonny came into the picture at about the 17-minute mark at the airport. I felt the same way as Tommy, who says this about a warrior as Alex is and what he can't have.
It's a free solo at that level. You really have to have the mental armor. Having that romantic relationship around is detrimental to that armor. You have to focus, and inherently a close romantic relationship removes that armor, and you kind of can't have both at the same time.
Yeah, he can't have a romantic relationship. A warrior cannot have it 99% of the time. The only kind of romantic relationship a warrior can have is with a warrior woman, or a warrior woman with an equally warrior man, whatever it is. But warriors have to have warriors beside them. If they don't, it's going to be an issue, because the person who isn't the warrior is going to put doubts in their mind, want to control them, etc., not pay close enough attention to what's happening. And so we have Sonny causing Alex to get injured. She owns up to it.
When I was lowering Alex, I was watching him come down the final section, and the rope went right through the gree-gree, right through my hands and right through the gree-gree, and he dropped to the ground. It was my fault that I didn't watch the end of the rope.
Okay, that's good. And but you know, this is worrisome. This doesn't happen to Alex. And then of course Alex slips on the free blast, and he doesn't even know why he slipped. That shows a mind that is no longer in focus.
He really doesn't even say he knows what happened. He's like, oh, suddenly I was falling, which is kind of surprising me because I feel like he's always so aware. Like, after that happened, for whatever reason, it kind of like waked me up more than normal. You know, normally I'm just like, oh, he's got it. He's such a beast. You know, he's gonna be fine. But
that word that Alex uses over and over
Soloing makes it feel far more immediate and much more present.
Does it feel different to be up there without a rope?
When you're climbing without a rope, it's obviously like much higher consequence, much higher level of focus. You know?
So we know now that Alex is not in the state of mind that he was in previously. That he seemed completely in charge of himself, his warrior self, which I love him using that term. And then we've got Sonny about a good ways in, about 30 minutes in or something like that, after the injuries and everything else. And she seems a little bit clingy and everything else. But then she says,
I can worry as much as I want internally, but if he doesn't do this stuff, he'd regret it.
Now that's good, seemingly. But of course she doesn't follow up on that. She acts like that she understands that he must do this. But over and over during this documentary, she's trying to use tears and questions and mannerisms to show her disapproval of who he is. And then right after she says this is what she says, indicating where her mind is and where her mind stays throughout this documentary, including the last scene that I'll get to here in a minute.
If Alex and I got married and had kids, I would feel a lot more willing to say what I thought about what was acceptable to us or not.
She would be willing to tell Alex Honnold what she finds acceptable in his risk-taking. In other words, she will tell him what he can do. This is not the type of person to be around a warrior. And I know this is a mindset that especially a lot of women have around men that they allegedly love the fact that men are risk takers, which we generally are more than women, but then they enjoy that sort of candy at the beginning, but then in the back of their mind the whole time they're thinking, well, I'm going to tame that a little bit in the marriage. This is the mindset that Sonny never gets out of in this documentary. I've heard now that they ended up getting married and that they even had a child, I think it was 3 months ago or so. What I will say is that I hope Sonny has matured. I hope that she has matured and has a warrior spirit so that Alex now is around a warrior, a fellow warrior spirit. I hope that's what's happened. But during this documentary, she did not have it. She is the type of person who wants to change the warrior she's with. She wants to control him emotionally and by importuning him, and it is not a pretty thing to watch. It isn't. And you fear for Alex. And that episode that happened on Free Blast in his first attempt is partially due to her, where she's put his mind. It wasn't the cameras. There are two reasons for that episode on Free Blast. In the early morning, in the fall of 2016. And the primary reason is Alex not being fully prepared, as he ended up doing later. And as he even said, I have to be fully prepared in order to have cameras around. And this is something he didn't fully understand when he hit the Free Blast that first time in the first attempt. But part of the reason he even went through with that, yeah, he got injured and everything, so it took a lot of time out, so he hurried himself. But also, his mind was not exactly in the emotional place it needed to be in full control. And that's partially the fault of Sonny, but ultimately, frankly, as in with all relationships, it's the fault of the person allowing themselves to be manipulated, and that is Alex. Alex is naive about relationships. That seems obvious. It is obvious from this. He's not naive about rock climbing. He's professional. He's a warrior, but he is not a warrior in relationships. And frankly, we all have to be warriors in relationships. We have to demand to have our own identity, and we have to demand of ourselves that we will not try to attempt to change the identity of the person with us. That is two warriors, two people who are confident and mature. And that's not what this relationship is in Free Solo. The next episode of Sonny being self-involved and lacking empathy towards Alex and not trying to understand who he is the mind-boggling dream sequence that she gives Alex at about the 54-minute mark. This is where, in the film, Alex has decided he is going to do the summiting of El Cap, but he hasn't told Sonny. And that says something right there. He hasn't told the most intimate person in his life. Everybody else knows. He and Jimmy have a quick talk.
What does Sonny say when you talk to her about it?
I haven't talked to her that much. She's been like asking all the questions, like, oh, how's it? And I just haven't really I'm just like, oh, we'll see.
When you're watching this, you're like, you haven't told Sonny? Why? And the obvious reason why is because he doesn't trust her. He's worried that she's going to emotionally puke on the experience. And so what happens soon after that is they're in the van, and this is great filmmaking, capturing all of this, is Sonny tells him a dream in which she says,
I had a dream and you were limping and you were like, had made the exact same fall and fallen on your ankle in the exact same way.
That's really nice, sounds like.
It was really tragic. I woke up like, oh my gosh, I hope that didn't happen.
That's really nice.
Yeah. She knows he's getting ready to try to summit and that he's very close to that. She's sensing it, even though she hasn't been told it. And she tells him this dream. Some people might even call this narcissism, frankly. You don't do that. You don't give that kind of fearful negativity to somebody about to put his life on the line. Your boyfriend, whom you love. It is so self-involved. It's mind-boggling, frankly. And of course, Alex doesn't know what to do with that. So his response, yeah, that's really nice. It's sarcastic. Frankly, what he should have said there is, really? Really, Sonny? That's what you're going to tell me before I go up? You're going to put that in my head? But Alex isn't mature enough himself yet on relationships. He doesn't know how to handle somebody like this. Somebody who broadsides him with this sort of fusillade of emotions. It's really unfortunate. So then, of course, right after this, we have the whole self-indulgence scene of Sonny pouring out her emotions, getting teary-eyed with the man, her man, who doesn't need it. He needs to be in the right state of mind. But no, Sonia decides this is the time to share my feelings, because he's just let her know she's pushed, and he's let her know that he is going to summit. And she disingenuously and fakely says that's so exciting, and then keeps looking at the book that he wrote on the iPad or whatever in front of her. And he calls her on that and says, yeah.
Is it that feeling where
It's
you're
so exciting, I'm going to go right back to my book.
Where you're like, no, I'm not reading it.
Yeah, that's funny. Again, him being sarcastic. So there you get that sense that there's still that Alex, that brutally honest Alex, that she says at the beginning of her coming into the film that she loves, but she doesn't really love it, does she?
I just thought he was really cute, but also brutally honest. But I'm really drawn to that.
Because she's constantly trying to bring that brutal honesty down. She does not respond well, as most women don't, to men's brutal honesty. Because women don't generally work that way. They go around the bushes to say what they've got to say. Men are more candid, and we can be assholes, outright assholes, whereas women tend more towards subterfuge. That's just the way it is. So, but she doesn't like that brutal honesty. But then right after that, they're holding hands in the front seat, and then she's processing.
When did you decide? When did you decide to do it tomorrow?
Yesterday, the day before.
Yeah. So it's about her right here. You know, one of the things that I was impressed by all of the people around Alex is it's never about them. All of them are very careful about making sure that everything is about Alex, that his headspace is clear, uncluttered.
Our being there is always going to change things. What made the big difference for me is that he did turn around last year. He didn't feel the pressure to have to do it because we were there.
Confident. Their worries about what's going to happen, what may happen, and what they're going to do, they don't ruffle his feathers with any of that.
What's up?
Oh, I went up the free glass and I was like, nah, I'm not into it.
Good for you.
They're very clear, but not Sonny. It's all about her. It's all about Sonny. It's disturbing. And then, of course, right after that, she says she wants to have a more holistic approach towards death. That's not a bad thing to say necessarily. Not quite sure what that means, really. But then she says,
but I feel like I want you to meet me halfway, and when you solo, to take me into the equation.
Wants him to meet her halfway. You know, and think about her when he's going to make his decisions, when he's going to free solo. Okay, I get that. But it's a bit of a catch-22. If you've got a good relationship and somebody trusts you, if Alex trusts her, he is going to tell her ahead of time. In fact, he'll want to tell her. He'll want to share the experience because she'll treat him like Jimmy treats him, like Tommy treats him, like Mikey treats him, with full candor, with full support. If he knows he's got that with Sonny, well, then she doesn't have to say this. The reason she's having to say this is because she's not the one who's giving him the support. It's everybody else. But she wants to, she wants to share this. It's about her right now. And frankly, if you do want to bring this up, you don't bring it up the night before somebody is going to put their life on the line. It is not about you. It is about them. He's the one up there on the granite face. This is teenage immaturity. It's frightening. And then, of course, right after this, there's the whole maximizing lifespan thing that she brings up with Alex. Again, you're just like, wow, how can you do that? And then he says no 3 times.
Would putting me into the equation actually ever change anything? Would you actually make decisions differently?
If I had some kind of obligation to maximize my lifespan, then obviously I'd have to give up soloing.
Was me asking you, do you see that as an obligation now?
No.
Oh.
No. But I in no way feel obligated, no.
To maximize lifetime?
No.
Yeah. And, she asked for it. She got the brutal honesty. But 2 things here. One, she starts tearing up. And this is obvious manipulation. Okay, yeah, I'm sure she was tearing up because that wasn't the answer she insisted on getting. She doesn't want to understand the man she's with. She insists that he be somebody else. But the thing that really is disturbing about this scene, even more than that, is the fact that even though Alex says no 3 times, there's indecision in his mind. There's questioning in his eyes. Those big irises of his. He's got irises twice as big as the normal human being. I find that fascinating. But you can see Alex, there's some trepidation there. And you're like, whoa, that's not good. Because as Alex says, you have to have 100% focus. As Alex says 5 times in this documentary, you have to have perfection.
I think that the free soloing mentality is pretty close to warrior culture, where you give something 100% focus because your life depends on it.
That he wants that moment of perfection, the 236 moments of perfection, but you cannot have it with that look that he got on his face that she caused to have on his face before he attempts his first summoning. And this is a woman who was a life coach. That was her job before she met Alex. She was a life coach. So then in the course of just about 8 minutes in this movie, fascinating, you go from the dumps, the most depressing aspect of the movie. Alex stops on free blast and says that he sucks. This warrior says that he sucks.
This sucks. I don't want to be here. I'm over it.
It's kind of disturbing.
It's depressing to watch. And he's making excuses about cameras.
I don't know if I can try with everybody watching. It's too scary. Just can't, like, try for real.
It's obvious that he's making excuses, even though he tells Peter that it was the feet.
Yeah. But like they said at the first half of the first slab. And then it just was like, I don't know, my feet.
You know, which one is it, Alex? Is it the cameras or the feet? Is it neither one? It's neither one. He's just not prepared, as I said earlier. He's got an immature woman in his brain rattling around. He was not in the right place. Thankfully, he stops himself. And as Jimmy sort of cleverly or funnily says,
I mean, in some ways, it would be kind of reassuring that Spock has nerves.
That's wonderful. Friends can say that about friends, right? But then it goes from this depressing aspect and the whole bizarre Las Vegas trip where he's in the dumps. You can see it in his eyes. He's lethargic. She is giddy as a bird, walking around talking about furniture. I was just repulsed by the whole Vegas thing. And then, but right after that, we don't get from the filmmakers what made Alex's decision to go back. What caused him to finally decide to go back and do the climb. But we do get a wonderful moment in the car with Alex. And I'm about to get to Sonny again here. I'm just doing the build-up on this. But Alex, the most wonderful speech in the entire movie, talking about perfection and the warrior mindset and the vast and people wanting to be, and the difference between them and the happy and cozy.
But she sees things in a different way. For Sonny, the point of life is like happiness. To be with people that make you feel fulfilled and to have a good time. For me, it's all about performance. The thing is, anybody can be happy and cozy. Nothing good happens in the world by being happy and cozy. You know, like nobody achieves anything great because they're happy and cozy. It's about being a warrior. It doesn't matter about the cause necessarily. This is your path and you will pursue it with excellence. You face your fear because your goal demands it. That is the goddamn warrior spirit.
Simply wonderful, isn't it? Simply wonderful. That's where his mind's at. But where is Sonny's mind at? Because she had just said previously that the whole Vegas thing was...
You're asking about our domestic bliss, it's non-existent.
Non-existent. Yeah. No marital bliss here. I mean, that's brutally honest. That was kind of nice to hear. Nice for her to say it, but you've got to know. There's so much going on. That phrase right there tells us that Vegas was not a good place for either of them, even though she looks giddy there for a while. But so Alex comes out of Vegas truly giddy because he's finally made up his mind. We get a sense that Alex has grown up. This is like the maturity moment, or very close to the maturity moment with Alex on putting into the proper perspective relationships and who he is. And I love that speech. My heart was just racing with joy after hearing Alex say that in the van on the drive back to Yosemite. But not Sonny. Sonny is no longer happy about thinking about furniture moving. Where is she? She can't grasp What's going on?
You never want to feel like you're getting in the way of someone's goal. And it's really hard for me to grasp why he wants this. But it's his dream, and he obviously still really wants it.
No, she can't grasp Alex. She won't grasp Alex. I'm not sure which one it is. I think it's both. At this point in her life, she does not have the warrior spirit. And if you don't have the warrior spirit, or you don't make a true attempt to understand the warrior spirit in the person you're with and embrace that, as some people do who are the girlfriends or wives of warriors, if you don't do that, can't do that, you are not going to grasp it. So that's where her mind is at still. So this means that they did not have a conversation in which she got resolution in Vegas. They're going their separate ways, even though she joins him later. But their minds are going in separate directions. That's very clear. So the next incredulous moment we have with Sonny is when Sonny and Jimmy are with Alex inside the van. It's right before Alex is going to go up. Excuse me. And here is your contrast in who is taking care of Alex and who understands Alex. Jimmy wanting to make sure that Alex has a successful climb. Amazingly, after over a year's work with him and his crew and money put into this whole thing and an extraordinary amount of effort put into this, he actually tells Alex one last time, we don't have to have the cameras.
What, you want us not to film it?
No. I mean, hard to say, but I care about doing it a lot more than I care about it being filmed. You know.
You can put your foot down at any time, and
yeah, I mean, I'm aware that like if I want to, I just won't tell anybody. I'll just do it on my own terms and like whatever. Like, I mean, that's obviously on the table, but obviously don't hose everybody either.
Yeah.
In other words, Alex, for your safety, for your satisfaction, for your enjoyment, for your dedication, we will go away. It's an astounding moment of, if you want to call it that, unselfishness. For Alex, for his life. Understanding that Alex is going to do this. So we need to get out of the way if he wants us out of the way. Jimmy and Elizabeth and the others are willing to do this. They want to do this if that's what Alex wants. Not Sonny. Sonny jumps in right after Jimmy says this, and this is what she says.
If you woke up tomorrow and you were like, you know what, screw all of this, I just don't care enough, like, I don't feel good enough.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I know I could do that, I could just walk away, but it's like, you know, I mean, you know, I don't want to.
Yeah. Still trying to get Alex to change his goddamn mind. Oh, you don't have to do this. That's not what Jimmy said. Jimmy knows Alex. Jimmy doesn't let his ego or personality get in the way of what Alex wants. The warrior Alex. He understands the warrior is going up, El Capitan. He's done his preparations. Sonny doesn't understand this, won't understand this. And then Alex dismisses her, which is good to see. He looks like he's truly comfortable. This is the moment in the film, I think, where I am looking at Alex and I'm like, okay, he's finally in that mental place, that brain space. He's got his confidence back. He now knows that he cannot take, frankly, he cannot take Sonny and her emotions and her emotional manipulation seriously. He is going to be Alex Honnold, the warrior. So all this said about Sonny, I want to say a couple of nice things about her. One, when she leaves on the morning of his climb, Alex made it clear that she's the one who made the decision on that.
I mean, I didn't ask her to leave. I mean, I would never ask her to leave, but, you know, I think she kind of understands that it's probably easier for me if she's gone.
That's a brave decision. I was stunned. I thought Alex had told her to go when all of that was happening. But she she made the decision. Something in her told her that Alex was in danger if she was there, I think. I don't think it was just about the fact that she couldn't emotionally handle it. I feel pretty sure that there was something in her that told her, you got to get out of the way. So I'll give her a hats off. If that's the case, I give her hats off to that. Good job. Good job. She's being interviewed in the front seat of the car as she's driving away. This is a really riveting scene. Your heart goes out to her when she says this.
Of like, what if something happens? Like, what if I don't see him again?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got a little bit teary-eyed the first time I saw that. But then again, where is her mind on this? Where does she pop right back into immediately? Because she says this.
You're like, why do you want to do this? Like, it's a totally crazy goal.
Why do you want to do this? It's a totally crazy goal. You see what I mean? She just can't put her brain around the warrior Alex Honnold. She still won't get it. Frankly, she's not deserving of him. At this, I hope she is now. But during this, she wasn't. And it is a granite wall that she has put up. And Alex has got to summit that granite wall to get to the other granite wall. But Sonny's not done yet, is she? I mean, she's got several more things she's going to say. This particular one on Uli Steck is poignant. It shows us who Alex is, brutally honest and very matter of fact. And Sonny, again, insinuating herself into Alex's mind and desires. So, Alex sees a thing on Uli and said,
I don't know. Obviously, it wasn't his day.
I mean, he's not being insensitive. It's just that's the way Alex looks at it for himself. He doesn't take as many risks. He doesn't do sketchy things like Uli does. So in his mind, it's not going to be his day because he's not going to let it be his day. That's his perspective on that whole Uli thing. But that's not how Sonny sees this. Sonny looks at the wife of Uli, who's now left alone. And, Sonny says this.
I talked to Alex for a really long time about all of this. And I was like, what if you die? Like, what if you die just like Uli died?
What kind of question is that? Putting that negativity into his head. And obviously, she's, again, just thinking about herself. What if you died like Uli died? Well, yeah, that's a possibility. Alex, can you think about me here? Can you think about me? Because it's all about me. What if you died like Uli died? What about me? Me. Seriously. This man is about to climb 3,000 feet. Excuse me, Alex, she's shouting up at him at 1,000 feet. What about me? Don't die like Uli died. And you just got to love this next segment where she mentions that Uli had a wife and Alex nonchalantly says, well, what did she expect? And Sonny blows a gasket. I don't expect that.
Had a really beautiful relationship and they would climb together. Alex said at one point, well, what did she expect? And I was like, what do you mean, what did she expect? I was like, I'm Nicole, Alex, and I don't expect that.
Yeah. Well, that's a possibility. And Alex wasn't being insensitive. It's just that if Uli's wife was with him, which she was, and she was a brave woman, she would know that there would be an expectation that this could possibly happen. That's, of course, what Alex means. And you get the sense that if Alex were with a warrior himself, he would also have that same expectation about her. If she's a warrior, especially if she's on a level above him, he would know, he would support, but there would be that expectation. That's what I would expect. That's the thing about Alex. He doesn't expect anything from anybody else that he wouldn't do himself. He's a giving guy, as his charity proves. But no, Sonny comes back with, I don't expect that. You will not think that way, Alex. I don't expect that. I don't want that. Again, not being a caretaker for Alex, not caring about what Alex wants to do with his own life. Alex is not insisting anybody else do anything with their life. He never does through this entire film. He never imposes on anybody else. He just simply wants to do his thing. And Sonny won't let it go, won't let him do his own thing. She wants it her way, whether they're married or not at this point. So the great thing about all this is, I've got one more thing to say on Sonny and Alex before I move on to the actual climb itself. But the great thing about all this is by this point in the film, Alex has made his decision to go up, and Sonny will not be able to get in the way anymore. He will not kowtow. He will not soft pedal. He does still a little bit in a way just to sort of appease her, but you can tell his mind is getting clear and he's ready to do it. As I think it's Jimmy says, they're getting tinges. Yeah. So Alex is going to do it. So obviously the great thing is he does it. And then the last thing that happens with Sonny and Alex, besides the phone call, which kind of went on too long, I felt like, in the film. And anyway, I just didn't really, frankly, I just didn't want to hear Sonny anymore. I just wanted to hear Alex and Jimmy and the people who really supported him. But anyway, so there's that tiny little bit at the very end of the film, I think it's the last scene, where Alex is giddy, as chirpy as a bird, giddy as an 8-year-old, big old smile on his face. And he says that some kid may come along and do something cooler. And then I think he just shrugs his shoulders and says, maybe it'll be me. I don't know, maybe. And he just kind of gets that impish look on his face. Then the camera pans over to Sonny. Take a look at that look on her face. That is not a happy face. That person is not giddy with joy that Alex may try to do something cooler than El Cap. More dangerous would be cooler. Now, she's not going to have any of that. This is not somebody who's supporting another person. This is somebody who wants her way, God damn it. And Alex will bend to her will. That's the look on that face. My hope is that face changed before they got married and before they had a kid. My hope is that she truly understands the great warrior, Alex Honnold, because that's what he is. He's a samurai of the cliffs, Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great is going to need his warrior woman with him. All right. So let's move on to the last part. Maybe in a sense the most exciting, the most mind-bending aspect of Free Solo. So let's do that now. Okay, so I'm going to get into the most magnificent 14 minutes in all of cinematic history. Yes, all of cinematic history right here. But first I want to talk about something I've mentioned twice, and that is this is the greatest mind-body achievement in all of human history. And I want to explain that. This is not the greatest mental achievement in all of human history. You've got what Newton did, what Galileo did. You've got Einstein's Annus Mirabilis in 1905 put out 4 papers, including special relativity and Nobel Prize on what he said about light, photons, etc. So no, it's not the greatest intellectual achievement of all time. It's not the greatest physical achievement of all time, obviously. There have been thousands of endeavors that required much more physicality. What those guys do in Iditarod, 16-hour days on sleds with dogs for a couple of weeks at a time, the people who run 100 miles, many others, going through the Amazon, whatever. So the physical achievements, it doesn't equal some of those. And as far as endurance, it doesn't equal those. I mean, you've got Shackleton going into the center of Antarctica and several other explorers, many other things. So it's not endurance, it's not physicality, it's not intellectuality. What it is it's a combination of all three. Primarily, this is one man's ability to control his mind, 100% focus, as he says, absolute perfection, for 3 hours and 56 minutes. You cannot mess up, not one time, not one little bit, or you die. It is dangerous. It's deadly dangerous. Everything's on the line. And when I say he's in control of his mind and his body. His body has to execute perfectly. It cannot wait too long, the karate kick. It cannot move too fast, the free blast slab, and many other places. It's got to be methodical. It's obviously, the planning out on this was extraordinary to watch. But you cannot make a mistake for 236 minutes, folks. And Alex does this. And let me put that into perspective. Imagine if somebody came up to you and they said, there's a white line, 6-inch wide white line on this pavement going into the distance. You have got to walk on that white line in tennis shoes, in shoes that are about 4 inches wide. And you've got to stay within that 6-inch strip, walking at a regular pace for 3 hours and 56 minutes. If any part of your shoe, any part of your body goes outside of that line in that 3 hours and 56 minutes, you get shot dead by somebody in a car that's driving next to you. Could you do it? I don't know if I could do it. I'd damn sure try. But imagine having to stay focused with death on the line, 1 inch on each side of your shoe for miles. What would that be? 3 miles an hour. That's 11 miles? Almost 12 miles at 3 miles per hour. At 12 miles, you cannot step outside the line. That's the kind of focus. I tried to put this into perspective for myself. I was a pitcher in Little League for 6 years, preteen and teenager. I was considered the best pitcher in the city, in the county. I was pretty decent. And so my coach had me going up against the best teams. And the best teams had the best home run hitters, usually. So I went up against some big boys, beefy boys, and I'm a skinny boy, like Alex. I'm built almost exactly like him. And so my mom fretted over this. She would tell me, she would vent her worries with me if I was going up against Silverio and some other big boys. Daxie, be careful out there. What are you going to do if he hits one of those home run balls, but it comes straight at your head? What are you going to do? I'm going to catch it. I'm going to catch it, Mom. Or knock it down. Don't worry. I'm focused. I'm dead focused. But my dead focusing only had to last for a couple of seconds at a time for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And yes, I had opposing players' parents yelling at me also while I was doing this. Unbelievably, adults yelling at a 13-year-old pitcher on the mound. So I got that distraction. I got my mom's voice in my head. But everything leaves. If you're truly focused, everything leaves. But what Alex did was everything left. He got into a brain space, a focus, a perfection, a warrior, a samurai for 236 minutes with crushing death down below. And unbelievably, he looks down a couple of times, nonchalantly. He looks as easy up there as a Sunday walk. Unbelievable. Truly. So I want to get into that I want to get into that 14 minutes here in a second. But first, I just want to say, again, hats off to Elizabeth and Jimmy for the interviews of everybody else in this film. The camera guys, the film crew, and the other climbers. Of course, Alex and Sonny as well. But these people who supported Alex and his mom, the insights, the thoughtfulness, the support of all of these people. And I want to just really quickly say them by name because they frankly deserve it. So I'll start with the people who had a little bit, and then I'll move up to the ones who were in this a lot. So Mark Sinot, wonderful comments. Shane Lempe, Peter Croft, loved the conversations he had with Alex, and it's the only time in this where Alex gets sort of seriously pensive when Peter mentions that thing about what cameras will do to you when you climb.
Or they'd be like, oh, he's got a movie crew. Like, clearly that's the wrong reasons, you know?
The worst thing about having a film crew is if it changes your mindset.
Yeah, that look on Alex's face, wonderful. Peter was wonderful. So down to earth. Just love that. And Mikey, God, how much do you love Mikey in this? I mean, that look he gets when they're talking about by the van, when they're talking about Alex's, what do we do? Who do we call? 911. And then the camera focuses on Mikey. And then when Alex is climbing and Mikey can't look, I mean, my heart goes out to him. And then, of course, my heart goes out to Alex, or my thoughts go out to Alex because of how much it means to Mikey. Brilliant. No wonder this thing won so many awards. But anyway, Mikey. And then, of course, Tommy. The comments by Tommy were just amazing in this. Yeah, over and over. This is a great guy. And that whole family get together, just wonderful. Just wonderful. And Jimmy is so impressive in this. By the way, let me just say that I wish we could have seen Elizabeth in this. I heard her, I think it was her a couple of times in the background during the climb. But unfortunately, she wasn't actually in it. So I wish we could have seen it. But Jimmy, so preoccupied. Jimmy and Tommy and several others, so preoccupied with the morality of this.
It's hard to not imagine your friend, Alex, soloing something that's extremely dangerous, and you're making a film about it, which might put undue pressure on him to do something, and him falling through the frame to his death. And we have to work through that and understand that what we're doing is something that we can live with, even in a worst case scenario.
Are we going to cause his death? Do we want to be there when it happens? These are wonderful people. It's not just Alex who comes out of this documentary smelling like a rose. It's everybody else except for Sonny. Everybody else is an extraordinary human being, really. And Jimmy just really also stands out. Yeah. So all of those people, and then of course the mom, you truly believe her when she says he's got to do this.
Him, and it would have alienated him because that's his whole life. I think when he's free soloing, that's when he feels the most alive, most everything, the most, feels the most. And how can you even think about taking that away from somebody? You know, I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's not as hard on her because she isn't there like Sonny. She doesn't have to go through what Sonny goes through. But you truly do believe the mom. So all of that said, the climb itself, the commentary, it's just, look, I took a bunch of notes during that. So I just want to briefly go through that 14 aspects of that 14. You got the whole start of the climb, which is just enervating. You know he's about to start. And Jimmy looks nervous. And then you got that ground shot up the face, which is wonderful. And then you got free blast and that side view of the camera with Alex on free blast. And of course, Alex Mikey saying, "Oh, it is so slippery right there."
It is so slippery right there.
This is where he bailed the first attempt.
This is where he bailed.
That was a nice little comment by Mikey. Worried. Of course, everybody's worried about Free Blast. Everybody except for Alex is worried about Free Blast, because Jimmy comes on, and he's learned that I think it's from Mikey or Mark, that Alex has already gotten through Free Blast.
Can you let me know when he's through the slab pitch?
Through the slab pitch.
He's through it?
Yep, he's almost in $1/2.
He's moving fast.
That's wonderful. So, and then the wonderful graphics right there. Just love that. And we really get a sense with those graphics of the jiggy-jaggediness and how far he's going, everything else. This is done several times in the climb. I love it all. It's so well done. And then, of course, the funniest part in the whole film and the whole documentary is the unicorn.
Person's getting up now. Yeah, no, there's a tail. This person has a tail, and it's either a chicken head or a bunny.
It's a unicorn.
Come on. Who does that? I've never seen that on El Cap.
It's just hilarious. It's a unicorn. I think that's Elizabeth who says it's a unicorn. And then Alex, this really shows a contrast between mindsets. You got people up there in unicorn outfits who are staying, camping the night on El Cap. And yeah, not everybody's going to do what Alex does, but it's a nice contrast. Alex moves by them like a race car.
And Alex is gone.
Then moves over to Hollow Flake. And I think it's Mark who says,
From the base of the Hollow Flake, it's one crack system all the way to the top, which is 2,000 feet?
Lovely. 2,000 foot long. That's just a great comment. Love that. And then Alex goes to the monster off width. And don't you just love the names? And then just wonderful shots after wonderful shots. You got that top-down shot of Alex on the off width at 1:24, the trees down below, and you just get a sense, you really get a sense of how high up he is. It's teeth shattering to look at some of these shots over and over. And the music is wonderful as well. And then Mikey says he's 15 minutes from the boulder problem, and Mikey's getting nervous.
My guess is he's 15 minutes from the boulder problem or so.
And then you got the boulder problem, and Mike turns around. Alex is relaxed and breathing hard. It's great close-ups of Alex's face and his focus. He does the quick karate kick. Mikey turns around briefly. Alex smiles at the camera and says something. He says for ya, or oh yeah, or something like that. It's really cool. Then gets up there and raises his hands. You start getting a little bit of an adrenaline rush. Is he going to be able to do this? He's about halfway up, right? Something like that. And then the enduro corner, and again, we get the explanation. And the close-up of his hands. How did they get that freaking close-up? With some of these they put those cameras in the perfect places. Jimmy and his crew. I mean, the camera work on this is mind-bogglingly good. Wow. And Mikey does turn around again, and he says, "I can't believe you guys."
I can't believe you guys actually can watch.
That's funny. And then the most perilous looking aspect of this whole climb for me was 2,500 feet up, as I said before, the traverse. When he comes around that traverse, my heart falls into my stomach right there. Wow. And the cinematography there and the music, The wonderful music right there. Starts off with the piano, goes into the violins, goes into the horns. And it's almost, whenever it's a little bit perilous, you get just a little bit of a sort of almost Beethoven or Sibelius feel to this. The danger, but it's not too much. It's never too much, because Marco Beltrami hits all the right notes all the time on this. And he comes around that edge, and then he finishes the traverse, and he looks over at the camera and says, "Hey, buddy."
Alex is having the best day of his life.
I don't know. Not me. I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah, no, this is it. We don't need to do this again.
Yeah, that's just wonderful. Oh my God. I mean, you almost, for me, I almost got a little bit more nervous here. I'm like, he's almost done. Don't fall now, Alex. Don't fall now. You've done all the 6 or 7 tough spots. Don't lose your focus. Stay in the moment. I think I was actually talking to the TV. I think at that point, I was. Anyway, he's nearing the end. He's moving fast. The sweeping camera movements around, sometimes staying close and then moving out. I mean, I got vertigo a couple of times. They were so amazing. And then Mikey smiles. And then at pitch 2980, just 20 feet from the top, I guess, something like that. And then Mikey says, "Oh God, he's done. It's done." He's ecstatic. And then we've got Alex walking around the top at 1:32.
Oh my God, I can't believe what I just witnessed.
I think it's Mikey or Mark who says, "Oh my God, I can't believe what I just witnessed." I think that was Mikey. And the camera pans out. This is simply wonderful how they did this. It must have been a helicopter or a drone, but it's in there. It's in there on Alex at the top, jubilant, and he's just looking around. The camera moves way back so that we get the full perspective and full prospect of this thing. And then Alex turns into a dot, and Alex just disappears. That's how big El Cap is. It's simply wonderful, the grandeur. And then we've got Alex and Jimmy on top. I just love seeing that. They both have a big smile. Jimmy is positively giddy.
Freaking rage. Like a gigantic weight off of my shoulders, too. I'll have to admit.
And then we've got that part, like I started this thing off with, where Alex says 3 times in a row, "I'm delighted." What a wonderful way to put that into perspective. And of course, Jimmy has that big, he says, "I've like a gigantic weight off of my shoulders too." He's got the huge smile. Yeah. But I love how Alex put this all in. He's so calm. You get the sense when he says, I'm delighted, big grin on his face, that he knew he could do it. And he makes that clear really later, doesn't he? When this whole thing is over with. And he has that look of the accomplished warrior, and he says,
I don't think the mountain looked that scary this morning. I felt so good. I mean, that's why I'm so happy that the experience was like what I hoped for. I didn't compromise on any of the things that were super important to me. Yeah, that I felt good.
I don't think it looked that scary this morning. No, it didn't to him. He knew what he was going to do for 4 hours. He knew what he was going to do. And then the wonderful comment about not compromising. Yeah, here's a man who doesn't compromise. He's the full-fledged warrior. And I know I've used that phrase many times, but damn it, Alex used it. He's not happy and cozy. I don't think he'll ever be happy and cozy. I don't think he's the type of person that will be that way. And who knows, maybe he will do something cooler. But I just want to wrap up by saying my hat's off again to Elizabeth and Jimmy and to all of the people surrounding Alex and the camera crew and the other climbers. And congratulations to Alex for putting his relationship into the proper perspective and getting his full identity, warrior identity, back. And I certainly hope that Sonny was able to mature through this as well and get a more fantastic perspective on her own personality and their relationship. I do wish that very well for her and for them, but I hardly know how to thank Alex Honnold for what he's given me, in the sense of this is what you can do with your mind and your body, but your mind especially. This is how you can take control over your life and stay focused and achieve those accomplishments that mean something to you, that mean everything to you. So I want to thank Alex for that and for this, and tell him that is the greatest thing that I've ever witnessed in my life. Free Solo, the documentary, 2017, June 3rd. It's a day to go down in history, and that's all I want to say. So I look forward to hearing all of y'all's comments, and please leave them below. And I will just say adios and take care of yourselves and talk to you soon. Bye now.